What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Today we are going to be taking you guys through a prismatic Peregrine Greaves, nice little build for y'all that allow you to do so much with your abilities and absolutely murk those champions, being able to stun all of them as well. So we got Peregrine Strike right here. All shoulder charge abilities, Seismic Strike, Hammer Strike, or Shield Bash deal bonus damage when activated in the air, damaging mini-boss, tormentors, or champions with that shoulder charge. Also fully refund that melee energy. So this thing is juicy for going into those GMs like you see in the gameplay right here. Now on top of the gameplay that you see going on right now with this GM, for our abilities, aspects, and fragments, I went with Blade Fury as our first one right here. Very good for DPS output, plus we got that Sever Suspend aspect to this as well, so being able to stun some champions, create a bunch of tangles as well just with our super. Now for our abilities, we're going to be using Tower Barricade with Strafe Lift, as well as Hammer Strike to pair with the Peregrine Greaves, and then Suppressor Grenades for me, one because of one of our fragments down here, and then also we got Unbreakable to pair with that, so we can summon a Void Shield that blocks damage when it is incoming towards us, draining that grenade energy and granting us Overshield, releasing the grenade, or running out of energy, releases a Frontal Blast from the shield that damages and also temporarily disorients those combatants that you hit by that. So nice and juicy little Void aspect here that's definitely off meta but does do some work. On top of that, for me, I went with Dranger's Lash right here so we can activate our barricade, suspending those targets. Just felt right pairing it with this build so we can have Void debuffs, Void buffs, as well as Strand debuffs and Strand buffs. Now on top of that, we're going to be using Facet of Dominance, so that Void Grenade is going to weaken targets. Good for our Void weapons to do a little bit of extra damage. Well surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage, while Transcendent, it is increased effect. Facet of Protection right there helps us with that shoulder charge. Peregrine Greaves combo, going through, getting our melee defeats, creating Orbs of Power, as well as just juicing those champions. Third on the list right here, Facet of Sacrifice. Well, we have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff. Final ability, Blows grant us Transcendent in the darkness, so we're going to get Transcendent very fast because of this. On top of that, Facet of Courage right here. Arc, Solar, Void abilities do increase damage by those targets affected by those darkness debuffs, so that is why we're using that Sever and Suspend on our super, as well as what we're using in Dranger's Lash, so we can do a little bit of extra damage even with that shoulder charge. Facet of Awakening, rapidly defeating those targets with Light, Darkness, or Super Final Blows, generate elemental pickups, so we're going to be able to create Tangles, Void Breaches, and Fire Sprites with this build. Not too shabby if you ask me, allowing us to get back our class ability, our grenade, as well as create some nice big explosions with those Tangles. Last but not least, we got Facet of Honor. Collecting those elemental pickups or destroying Tangles grants Transcendent energy of the same type, so another way that we're going to get our Transcendent very quickly in this build. On top of everything else that we're getting with the Overshield, we're able to suspend, we're able to also suppress as well as weaken targets with this build, so absolutely crazy, all the different buffs and debuffs that we're getting. Now to pair with this build, make it good for that end game, we went with that triple 100s with Resilience, Discipline, and Strength. Resilience was my number one, Discipline, Strength kind of interchangeable for number two, but I did like having Strength at the 45 so we could get that back as quick as we could, but when we were hitting champions anyways, we were getting it back pretty quickly. We're going Void Siphon and Harmonic for our weapons that we have. This right here you could change out depending what you want to go into between heavy or that special ammo finder. Totally a personal preference. For me, internal feedback loop, I went with Impact Induction so we can get our grenade back, and then also we can get our class ability back with doing damage with that melee, as well as heavy-handed to create even more Orbs of Power for us. Now we're going to be using those Orbs of Power for Font of Restoration down here, so that recovery is going to go from 70 to 100 when we do have this proc, so this is going to be up almost all the time with all the orbs that we're getting. Time Dilation also helps with Font of Restoration with Bomber, so when we do use our class ability, we're getting our grenade back a little bit. On top of that, all those orbs that we're creating are going to give us some health back with Recuperation, as well as feed our abilities, whether it be all of them or our least energy charged abilities. So again, totally up to you for this slot, but those orbs are helping us in multiple different ways with Restoration, as well as what we have on our boots. Now for the GM, I went into Double Arc with some Sniper is what I chose, but again, when you're going in for your resistances, totally up to you depending on the activity that you are going into. So nice, a little bit of total internal feedback with your abilities, being able to juice them, creating orbs of power everywhere, and basically having quad 100s on this build because we got 3 natural 100s and then recovery at 70 with that font of restoration, giving us plus 30 in that recovery, juices that up to 100 as well. So beautiful little build with that quad 100s. Now, when we move on to weapons for this bad boy, like I said, we're going to be able to stun all different champions with this with ease due to our weapons. So the call right here, we got slice 1 for all on this bad boy, the rocket assisted frame. This thing is going to be super good for having some of that slice to be able to create us tangles. Plus, it's going to sever targets, allowing our fragments to proc to have us do a little bit more damage. Plus, the stuns are unstoppables, and we got dealer's choice on it. Graviton Lance is what I was using for that Vorpal, that anti-barrier, as well as one of our void weapons. Again, totally up to you. I do like Elsie's Balls rifle right here. Very good backup if you don't have this as an exotic. Now for me, I went with Falling Guillotine down here. Bait and switch Vorpal, very, very, very good for that DPS side of things. We got Indomitability on it, so we can get a little bit of our melee or our grenade, depending on our subclass that we are using. So a little bit of juice there. Plus, we're getting that Abysmal Defiant to go off, where we got that nice 35% damage increase to those void weapons when we weaken targets, which we're getting via our grenade. Now we move on to our Hunter's Journal right here. Of course, we're going to be using Anti-Barrier Pulse, Unstoppable Sidearm for both of those weapons that we got. Now we went with Overcharged Armory for the dealer's choice. That'll help with our sidearm having a little bit more oomph when it is the overcharged weapon and that modifier is active. Now on top of that, Winning Hand right here, dealer's choice origin traits, so that sidearm that we got in the call has the chance with defeating those targets rapidly to have a solar explosion. So it's basically like having ignition on this as well, so a good little aspect that we have to even make this better. Moving on, we got Elemental Siphon to help us to create even more of those elemental pickups that match our subclass. So for us, even more tangles, which we're going to be using that Threaded Blast for sure, because the explosion from this is pretty disgusting in my opinion. It's like almost 3 times the size, in my personal opinion, of just a normal explosion, so definitely a go-to. Now because we are using a sword, we're going to be using Overload Sword on this bad boy to stun the Overload champions. Obviously we got our Anti-Barrier Pulse and Graviton and the call for our Unstoppable. We got the Blade Stamina, so rapidly defeating combatants with the sword gives us a little bit of ammo, as well as Argent Blade. Well, we have that sword armor charge. Dealing damage with a sword consumes an armor charge but empowers it with damage, so nice little bit of synergy right here with the artifact and that Falling Guillotine. Last but certainly not least, we got these two with Radiant Orbs to help us to become Radiant for having that nice light buff on us, allowing us to proc some of our fragments on the subclass for Prismatic, as well as that nice void sources dealing increased damage to those weakening targets. Like I said, it's 35% damage increase, so our pulse rifle and our sword are going to do a good amount of damage because of their perks already, but this is going to help them out a lot as well. So we were able to go through that GM with no problem, clear out everything in about 18 minutes with some randos, even with the new version of this strike. Very, very good, except for the fact that you do got to get up close, pretty personal with those Overload champions and that sword. So sometimes just the mechanic, like always, no matter what our weapon is, it's sometimes hard to stun those Overload champions with that sword, but when you do, they instantly disappear because of everything that we got. The juicy damage on that sword, Prismatic, Transcendent coming in hot. We're getting Suspend, we're getting Jolt, we're getting Suppression, we're getting Weaken, and we're able to wipe out these champions with one single melee, get it right back as well because of Peregrine Greaves. So combination of the build is pretty disgusting. Obviously we can build out Peregrine Greaves a little bit better and a little bit more juicy with a couple other builds, but I'll come out with that in the future. This is just an all-around good build, kind of off meta, that anybody can take into any kind of content, GMs, raid, etc. Get you guys through it with ease so you don't have to worry about a thing. So again, truly appreciate you guys for coming back to the channel. Means a lot to me, means a lot to the channel as well, helps me out a bunch in the algorithm. Don't be afraid to like and subscribe, hit that bell if you haven't so you get those notifications on these videos right here for these builds or the god roll guys that we put out on weapons as well. We got ourselves a Discord, so join that if you would like. Go follow us on our other socials. It means a lot again to me. All the support, absolutely disgusting. So again, truly appreciate all you guys. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.